Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. This is Paul Catalina's Top 5 at 5:55, presented by Champion Salon and Barber. To book your appointment, go to championsalonandbarber.com.
All right. Top 5 CFP possibilities. So I thought we'd break down some of the ones that could happen. I think there's a couple more that could, but these are the ones I think that are probably the most likely. In whatever order you want to put them in. I just had to list 5 things today. So,
that's why it's called a top 5.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not like it wasn't ascending. Sometimes it's ascending or descending, whatever. Number 5, and there's a common thread in all these: Georgia, Notre Dame, Baylor, and Michigan. That's if Baylor beats Oklahoma State, Cincinnati loses, Georgia wins, and Michigan wins.
You're telling me, you have Notre Dame in this list.
Yes.
Okay.
So that would mean Notre Dame, because Cincinnati loses and, you've got a couple other things going on, Notre Dame can jump in.
How about if Georgia beats Alabama by 3?
I still think Notre Dame gets in, because then you've got
No, I'm talking about Baylor.
Baylor?
I'm not a believer in Baylor making the playoffs.
I'm not either.
That's why they're only in one of these possibilities.
Yeah, I'm not a believer that there's enough room for them to make up. I just don't see it. Grayson tried to convince me earlier this week, and I know there's a way that in theory it could happen, but I'm not buying it. I'll gladly eat crow, just like Oklahoma State had 3 sacks in the first game, which I couldn't remember. So they had 3 sacks, and I'm sure they'll probably have around that, if not more, on Saturday again. But yeah, that would be really interesting to see. I mean, Baylor amongst those 3 blue blood brands right there. But yeah, I think the chances are low for the Bears.
Okay, right. I'll throw this one out there. Georgia, by the way, Georgia's in all these because they're in this thing, unless Alabama somehow beats them by 70, which is not going to happen. But Georgia, Michigan, Cincinnati, and Notre Dame, that means that those games with those 3 that are already in go chalk. Baylor beats Oklahoma State, and Notre Dame gets those votes because they're Notre Dame from the committee.
Where's Bama? How do they just get whooped by Georgia?
Yeah, Bama gets out because they lost to Georgia in whatever fashion they lost to Georgia.
Okay.
And they got 2 losses. So then you've got 2 undefeated teams and 2 one-loss teams in there.
No matter Oklahoma State, Baylor.
This is Baylor beats Oklahoma State.
Okay.
But the committee goes, well, good but not good enough, Baylor. The Catholics win.
I mean, yeah, this is definitely more possible. Obviously, 3 of those teams are already lined up they're already in the top 4. So you just have to replace Bama with Notre Dame. I mean, Notre Dame you'd have to have Baylor win.
They would jump Oklahoma State, wouldn't they?
Yeah, because Baylor would win.
Yeah. Baylor would beat Oklahoma State.
That's how that keeps happening. So, yeah, I mean, that could, in theory, happen, yeah.
Why am I here?
Yeah, I don't know. It's okay, buddy.
You need Bama to drop a couple spots.
Yeah. Number 3. Georgia, Cincinnati.
This is different.
Oklahoma State and Alabama. This would be if Alabama beats Georgia, Oklahoma State beats Baylor, Cincinnati wins, and Iowa beats Michigan.
Yeah, I have so little faith in the Hawkeyes, though.
Yeah,
I mean, I really don't have a whole lot of hope.
Underdogs to Nebraska, and
God, I have very little. I mean, look, it could happen. Anything could happen, but that's the one I'm probably the least optimistic about, I think. But no, certainly this would be a very fun and interesting playoff. I mean, 2 Big 12 schools, so to speak, and 2 SEC schools, and yeah, I could see where this would happen. I mean, you laid it out, but I could see this happening.
Yeah, all right. Number 2, Georgia, Michigan, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma State. This basically means everything goes chalk. Like, everybody wins. And
Georgia beats Alabama solidly enough. Oklahoma State beats Baylor.
Cincinnati,
and they stay ahead of Notre Dame and Ohio State or whoever else.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably the most realistic one. I mean, as far as what could happen the easiest because of Georgia beating Bama. Unless the committee just felt like again it's they lost by 1 in overtime or something like that. But yeah, I mean, move Bama out of the way, and that's who the top 4 are. So yeah.
So Georgia would play Oklahoma State, or is this in order?
Yes.
Okay, and Michigan, Cincinnati. Okay.
Yeah. Georgia plays Oklahoma State, and then, of course, they get to pick, which means they're not picking the Cotton Bowl. They'll pick the Orange Bowl and do that one. All right, number 1, Georgia, Michigan, Cincinnati, and Alabama, which,
no way that happens. Why is that not going to happen?
What do you mean?
Because they're not going to want Georgia to play Alabama in the semifinals.
Oh, okay. So I should have flipped these around. I should have flipped those two around.
That's the only reason. The four, yes.
Yeah, the four, yes. But
okay.
So it'd be Georgia. It would be Georgia, Michigan, Alabama, Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So and Alabama, Michigan would probably play in the Cotton Bowl, and that place would be, which I think they did once. I think they did an opening weekend game there one time.
No, they did. I think they did. Yeah, Bama, Michigan, AT&T. Yeah, I mean, this is the top four right now, just reversed in some ways. I guess Cincy and Bama are flipped.
Yeah.
But outside of that, this is the top four. So, yeah, I mean, this is I don't know. It would be kind of a bummer to see the top four relatively unchanged after a championship weekend. That means it was pretty mellow across the board if it just stays pat. But that is a very realistic option because I don't think anybody's – I mean, the Georgia-Bama game's the one that's the big, what could happen here. But I'm telling you right now, man, watch out for Houston. I mean, everybody keeps – I think everybody's well aware. But for real, I mean – I wouldn't be shocked to see Cincy beat them and beat them convincingly, but I also wouldn't be shocked to see Houston give them one hell of a run for their money either.
Yeah. It's fun because there's always a shot, and there's probably one in there that if you like algorithms, somebody spits it out.
I left out Ole Miss and Ohio State in this. There's probably some sort of weird chaos that would have to happen to get one of those two teams in, but. Yeah, I mean, I think Baylor of the two lost teams that could get in because Baylor's playing this weekend. I think Baylor's the one that could, again, give another chaos.
Oregon and Utah play Friday night. That won't have any bearing at all. No. Then you have the 11 o'clock Baylor, Oklahoma State, 3 o'clock Georgia, Alabama sets up the same time Houston and Cincinnati, and then that evening Michigan and Iowa.
Be really interesting. Let's say Georgia blew out Bama, Iowa beats Michigan. Houston beats Cincy, Baylor beats Oak State. I mean, that would be that you could who the top. Okay, let's say all that happened. Do you know who the top four would be?
Georgia,
Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Ole Miss.
Yeah,
and then Baylor would be right there too. And Baylor would have to hop over Ole Miss and Ohio State for a championship game.
If in fact the College Football Playoff Committee is not full of liars. 2014, a scenario happened where two teams didn't get in, TCU and Baylor, because they didn't have the latest data point.
Yeah.
And Ohio State and Ole Miss and Notre Dame, none of them are playing this week and wouldn't have one. So if any of them get in, that sure would be a freaking hypocritical thing if there ever was.
Well, that wouldn't be the first time they've been hypocrites. But, yeah, I mean, that would be the craziest scenario would be where you ended up with Georgia – Notre Dame, Ohio State, and possibly Baylor. Like that would be wild. But I'm not banking on that happening.
All right. When we come back, it's tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Jack McKenzie and Armstrong Sims. Armstrong, thank you, sir. Jack, thank you as well. Don't forget, go to Sikkim 365 Radio or in the chat room. The link